Welcome. I'm delighted that you've joined me here again today. I'm broadcasting from sunny Connecticut, not from SOM, but with my background, hopefully it feels a little bit more like home. Um, Today we're talking about reimagining our career in 2020. I want to help you to refine your thinking about how to position yourself both for short-term and for long-term success during these unprecedented times. Thinking about your career, though, or reimagining it today isn't dramatically different than imagining it actively at any other point in time. So what's unusual today is this unique circumstance of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in other times, there'll be other circumstances to consider as well. At the core, it's really about knowing in what ways you want to make an impact in the world and contemplating and actively exploring and being curious about where you might best fit in. So it looks like people are still coming into the room, but we'll get started. So in terms of an objective today, by the end, I want you to have some comfort that you have a framework to evaluate your current state, your current career goals, and how you want to position yourself. And we'll talk about some steps to help you to refine your thinking. And as I said a moment ago, we're going to consider the current pandemic and its impacts economically and socially, et cetera. We're also, though, going to think about this from a long-term strategy that you can use throughout your career in a way that transcends current circumstances. Kayla, just so I can get a sense for what's going on in people's thoughts, would you run the first poll, please? I'm curious, what do you think about available opportunities today in the career market versus at the end of 2019? I'm watching the results come in, and I think you probably won't be surprised. Give it a few more moments. Okay, we'll let this one run. The webinar today will be recorded or is being recorded, and technology willing, we will have a recording to share with you afterwards, and also slides and resources that I will have maybe mentioned in the slides. So those will be available for you as well. So let's end the polling here. It's quite interesting. Most of you believe that there are fewer opportunities. A few of you don't see a change, and a couple more actually understand that there are really still plenty of opportunities. The nature, though, of those opportunities is different than what they were a few months ago. So this is really important to kind of just understand where people's mindsets are. A lot of people are walking into this time and their career searches assuming that they're stuck, and really they're not. So we'll talk about some of the things you can begin to do. So today, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I do have a lot to share in terms of foundational ideas, and I've very specifically created a lot of space at the end for your questions. So I hope that you'll think about what you want to get out of this for yourselves personally, and please share those ideas in the Q&A. First things first, I hope that you're going to give yourself this hour to really focus on the time together and really contemplate your career. We'll ask questions through the Zoom Q&A function. And if there's something that's more of a personal nature, or if you want to go deeper about anything, I would love to speak with you through a coaching appointment and a one-on-one coaching appointment. And you can make that appointment through the SOM portal, the alumni portal. Across the top, it's the main page, and then you've got the directory, which hopefully you'll take some time and update to let people know what you're doing and where you are. And then the next tab over is career, and on that career page, in addition to resources and some other materials, you'll find the link to create a coaching appointment. After the session, there will be an email with this recording sent to those folks that have been on the session, and it will also be posted among many other remarkable webinars by faculty and others associated with SOM on the SOM YouTube page. So if you didn't realize that there was an SOM YouTube page, I hope that you'll go out and find that as well. In terms of, kind of getting started here, I want you to check in with yourself, and you might want to check in with yourself more regularly than just today. Perspective taking is really important. We are all experiencing a global pandemic. We are not all, as I've heard many times before, shared in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat. We're in the same storm, and some people are experiencing it very differently. Check in with yourself around your family, around your work, around yourself personally, in context with your community, and understand that how you're experiencing things may not be the same as how other people are experiencing them. And just in communicating with folks, it's really important to check in and say, how are you? And give time and space for that. Things are changing daily. If you'd like a reminder about how to do this, Dr. Mark Brackett of the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence has a wonderful app called a mood meter. And you might even think about using that with your family. He's using that quite actively in a lot of schools and had started that in advance of the COVID-19 pandemic. I found it to be quite useful in sharing with folks, just to give them some sense of how they've been doing and what their mood and emotions have been through all of this. You want to know, when you're taking your perspective taking, what's controllable in your world and what's not. And we want to really focus on those things that we can actually have an impact over. And we want to actually think about what are our facts truly and what are beliefs. So that first poll was not factually based, that was based on our beliefs. So if you don't believe that there's opportunities out there, you're probably not going to find them. If you do believe that there's opportunities, they just are different today, or they're maybe a little bit delayed, then that's going to inform what you're able to find through your evaluation of what's coming for you personally or professionally. In terms of change, there's a lot happening right now. This is one of my favorite change curves that really shows kind of how people move through and orient themselves through different change processes. And it's important to also notice that where you might be today is different than where other people might be. In the brain, change is a threat state. Uncertainty is a threat state. And when we're activated in those ways, what happens is all the blood goes to the back of our brain. It goes into the amygdala, into fight flight, or it goes into the very emotive limbic system. And when we are not feeling comfortable, feeling threatened in some kind of a way, we don't actually have blood flowing up to the prefrontal cortex where our higher level reasoning happens. And again, this is another reason why it's really important for us to check in with ourselves. Breathe. It's a wonderful exercise at any point in time. Breathing actually lowers cortisol in our bodies. It increases the oxygenation to the brain, and it lowers our heart rate such that we can actually really check in with ourselves from our highest levels of reasoning. In terms of our experiences as well, where we've come from and what we've experienced in the past informs how we experience certain things. So as we move through this pandemic, and as you move through your life generally, I'd love you to kind of pay attention to what might be some of your emotional triggers that take you out of your best thinking. And we can either in a coaching conversation, or you can kind of work with this yourself, is just to help you to figure out how you might notice them in the future. When you can notice those things, you can adjust and pull yourself out of that thinking and back into the thinking that you want. Again, focusing on where you'd like to be as opposed to ruminating on where you are currently. So tell me, if we're talking about your career, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? It's one of my very famous favorite quotes. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and it is having quite strong economic impacts globally. And the data that's been collected for over 100 years shows that recessions are half as long as booms. And I want you to get ready for that next boom and to think about, how does this current environment inform what might happen next? I suspect that people might consume things differently. Different companies might be born of this pandemic. There's a number of articles that I've seen on the web that have talked about the companies that were born after 2008. Many of them are technology companies that we are leveraging very strongly today to keep connected. So there will be opportunity. There is opportunity. Things are changing even today. And part of what we need to do is to think about, what might those changes be, and how do I leverage my unique skills and experiences in new ways in this new evolving economy? What you want to accomplish in your life is not defined by a single job or even this relatively small blip in time that we are experiencing today. You're resilient. And as I said, markets go up and they go down by design. Booms follow busts. So again, let's get ready. Allow yourself to take the opportunities today to be fully aware of and contemplating and networking with folks to understand or place yourself in a way that you'll be top of mind when markets do open up again. I'd love you to kind of step back at the end of all of this, and even at the end of your career, and be able to say to yourself, I lived my best life, and I was resilient, and I am comfortable and happy with how I attended to and dealt with challenging times in my career, and I grew from them. Another orientation that I share with people that they sometimes find useful is thinking about your children. If they followed in your footsteps in terms of the types of choices they made in their careers, what is it or how is it that you'd feel about that? And if you're not comfortable, if you feel like you're settling more often, or you can't afford the luxury of having a job you really love, just know that your kids are watching, and that's what they're going to learn about work, because they are very observant, especially in this space and time when we're all together all the time. So think about that. And another resource, if you do find yourself with a little bit more time to contemplate, is David Brooks. Some of you might have already seen his TED Talk about, are you living for your resume or living for your eulogy? And he also has a book that came out earlier this year called that was based on that concept, called The Second Mountain. So those are a couple of things for you to think about in terms of setting yourself up for real long-term success. So getting back to today, though, I want you to begin to take stock of your resources. The photograph that I've shared here is intentional. There's a lot going on in this photograph, and the woman in the bottom left sees only a couple of things. You can imagine yourself in the grocery store, maybe looking for toilet paper, in an aisle, and you don't see what you need. But what you do need is just, it's around the corner. It's, down the hallway a little bit. You have a lot more resources in terms of skills, experiences, contacts, than you might give yourself credit for. So I'd love you to kind of really step into this and be creative in your brainstorming about, what is it that I've done? What things have I learned over time? And we'll get into this in a moment. Just because you have these skills doesn't mean we're necessarily going to use them, but what we probably will wind up doing in any job progression is taking those older skills, those mastered skills, and different experiences, and we're going to put them together in a unique new way and leverage that into our next job. It's easier, though, to do that. It's easier to find really compelling stories to share with recruiters if we have that really nice inventory of things that we have done in the past. If you're having difficulty thinking about what it is that you have in terms of skills and resources to share, ask for others' point of view. It's sometimes really useful to understand what other people come to you for and what they think you might do better than anybody else. In terms of how to figure this out, there's some questions here for you to contemplate. I love the one, what excites me? One of the things that I pay attention to in coaching conversations is energy. People will share things, and it's quite interesting to hear them say, yeah, I'm really excited about that, when the tone of voice that they use doesn't match up with energy I might have heard them speaking about when they were talking about something that they were really proud of or really excited by. So, kind of paying attention to your energy, what gives you energy, what drains your energy. I think we can all probably think about people or things or places or events where when we have to engage it, or if we see that person pop up in our cell phone, we just go, right? We're looking for, in this opportunity, in this brainstorming space, to figure out what is it that we do want to invite in, we do want to hold space for in our lives. What do we want to start, stop, and continue? As you're thinking about these things, as you have some of these questions and you're brainstorming about them, and hopefully write them down, because from one idea, even if it's not from your own perspective, your best thinking, other ideas might be born from that. It's harder to add to that robust brainstorm when you're actually trying to hold it all in your head. I'm a huge fan of writing things down with old-fashioned pen and paper, not necessarily typing, because our brain operates differently when we brainstorm physically. Think about solutions, but also think about questions. Sometimes you don't actually have the answers. And again, I mentioned earlier, uncertainty in the brain is a threat state. We like to solve problems. We like to, kind of, here's a question, here's an answer. When we brainstorm, though, it's not about what could we do and coming up with the first couple of ideas. Those are probably things we've already done, and probably the things that got us to where we are right now. If we're looking to move to a new place, if we're looking to expand our horizons, it's really helpful to be in that space of curiosity and asking questions and focusing on getting the question right. That's actually a really powerful skill for most leaders, is really making sure that operationally or systemically, in terms of their organizations, they're thoughtful in terms of impacts, and they really truly are answering or asking the right questions to help them to create leverage and new opportunity in the business. Another important piece of guidance here is, please suspend your personal editor. Allow yourself to put out even some of the more crazy ideas when you're thinking about these things. And again, from those, some of your most creative and transformative ideas will be born. Celebrate what's unique and creative. Be okay with the idea that something might not be immediately attainable, but put it out there anyway. Because sometimes those small steps towards that help us to position ourselves for true success in the future. Again, when you're asking questions, might feel uncomfortable. You might not know, or you might not, for many people, have ever really thought about what you want to do. Notice that discomfort and stay with the question anyway. Again, from a threat state, our brain, when we're feeling uncomfortable or uncertain, it's going back into, kind of primitive times when we were honestly worried about that saber-toothed tiger that might come up behind us and get us. So that's why we feel so anxious when that happens. You can notice it. I'm okay. I'll get through this. Stay with the question and allow yourself to kind of reset if you need to. Different thinking is required to move you forward. Environmental, economic, social, political circumstances are evolving. So again, if you've come up with ideas or you had thoughts about your career mindset in the past, what you wanted to do, those opportunities may not be around tomorrow. I know certainly folks have experienced the financial crisis of 2008. The paychecks of the days prior to 2008 don't exist today because some of those jobs don't exist. What we value changes, especially as technology continues to evolve. Old thinking at best is going to hold you in your place, and at worst is going to set you very far back when the rest of the world moves forward. I have this picture, this image actually on the whiteboard in my office back at SOM, and a number of times when people have been in coaching meetings with me, they've stopped and they've taken a picture of it. So I wanted to share it with you here today as well. When we're looking for jobs, when we're thinking about career, oftentimes people start in that, far right circle. They're looking for what's available, what's posted, what can I make money at? We'll get there, but I'd love you to start your focus on the other two circles. What are some of the things that you really love to do? I mentioned energy earlier. What gives you energy, even if you're not great at it yet? What are the things that you're excited to learn? What are the things that you'd like to be known for? If you look at the star, those are the things people come to you for. In a prior life, before I became a coach, I have an MBA in finance. I was pretty good with the Black-Scholes math, and I'm really good at finding the out of balance and a discounted cash flow analysis. I don't want to do that anymore. I was paid really well for that, so it was kind of far over to the right, but it wasn't anywhere near that hard. I so much more love what I do today than what I did then. And if I had only ever gone after the money, I'd never be here with you today in the way that I am. So while we might not be able to kind of take a jump into that new space right away, I want you at least to be aware of it, because it makes it a heck of a lot easier to find what you're looking for if you've identified what it is. And again, going back to the prior slide and thinking about feeling uncertain, many of you might not have ever really thought about what you want to do. You might have gotten on a path, as I did, right? I majored in accounting, and then I got my MBA in finance and marketing, and I was on a path that just wasn't mine. I hadn't actually really thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up. And amusingly, if I think about what I had thought I wanted to do when I was a young person in high school, I'm much more well aligned with that today than I was in the earlier parts of my career. So knowing what you're looking for is going to help you to share in your LinkedIn headline or in your check-in conversations as you're beginning to reach out and reconnect maybe with people that you went to school with, undergraduate or at SOM or prior companies. You are not your last job title. You are much more than that. So I really want you to think about, what do you want to be known for, and even moving into that space of, what's your offer? As we contemplate, especially those that are wanting to maybe move into something new that they haven't done, it really is about taking inventory of those older skills and outcomes and presenting them in a way that it's inviting to, resonant with the types of opportunities you're looking to be considered for. And you're going to want to think about, what's a summary statement, a beautiful kind of succinct piece of language that effectively highlights in just a few words that intersection of your prior experience and success with your future goals and desired impact. It makes it a lot easier for people if they're looking through your LinkedIn and they see that, that statement in your headline, for them to say, oh, who is this person? Let me check in with them. I do want to acknowledge, there's some of us, we just need a job. We just need to pay the bills. I want to remind you, again, that great things can happen even in difficult times. And you might just not have figured it out yet. As I think about this slide, I think about the song by Michael Bublé, I Just Haven't Met You Yet. You just haven't found your next great job yet. So yet's very powerful. Think about adding that into your thinking. Also think about, when and where you use words like but. I think you look great today, but I prefer you in blue. But sometimes negates what came before. So if you're in a space of saying, I would love to have a job that I love, but I just need to get one right now. You might be in a better position if you say, I would love a job like this, and I just haven't found it yet. So I want you to kind of stay in that space of abundance and possibility, because if you think you can't get it and if you think you have to settle, you're likely not actually going to find it, even if it's right in front of you. The other thing I'd like to kind of put out there for you is that you have skills and companies have problems right now. And a lot of companies in this current time, I was speaking with somebody earlier who really is wanting to focus on growing businesses. Well, a lot of the same skills that we use to grow businesses are the types of skills that we would use today in evaluating what are the changing opportunities and the changing needs that are unmet currently in the marketplace or by companies, and how do we leverage or take care of the arbitrage on those opportunities. Similar skills. If you get into an organization that's trying to reorient, you'll be well positioned in a few months when the economy opens back up again. And we're also thinking about, from that longer term view, what will people be looking for long term, and it'll set you up to really, kind of be in a space to make a bigger impact when the boom does happen. Activate your network. People will say yes to saying hello to you. People will say yes to, even if it's a quick check-in. I attended a virtual graduation party yesterday. There's lots of ways to connect with different people, and in that virtual graduation party, it was really fun to think about the journey of the last few years and how much that person had grown and developed, and really thinking about the possibilities for what's coming next, even as we're in this, kind of bizarre social distance place. We perhaps spent more quality time together than we would have if we had actually been back in a physical presence with one another, because we were able to kind of carve that out. When you're talking to people, if you're looking actively for a job today, please don't jump in and ask them for a job, because without context, they may not be able to say yes, I have a job right here. Here it is. Think about small yeses. Think about showing people by how you show up, how you are uncomfortable or how you are comfortable in ambiguity, how you are being resourceful and creative, how you are, taking this time to really do research, courses on Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, or any number of other things. I know somebody that I'd worked with in the past was really, really interested in design thinking and getting a role in a consultancy that focused on design thinking. So as he was preparing for that transition, he actually took courses in design thinking. So when he showed up, they knew that he was really invested in that new opportunity, that new type of work, and he already had the language. And sometimes that's all it takes as you're talking to people and thinking about new opportunities, is understanding what is the language and how is it different there than what I might have experienced in the past or the way I have previously discussed it. This is really important for you to understand, because when we get to a point, and we're not there today in this webinar, but when we are to the point of really diving in and writing a resume, it's really, really important to not share what you've done from that historical point of view. This might sound a little odd to some of you. And appropriately tailoring your resume doesn't simply mean shifting a couple of bullet points around into a different order. It means thinking about really, kind of in a deep and robust way, what is the job that they are looking for me to do? What is the problem that in this organization I would solve, and in what ways would I create value, and working with who? And then you want to share excerpts of your prior life in story form with that organization in ways that they're going to be excited to say, tell me more about this bullet point. We need that. They're not going to be able to see themselves in the story if it's all about what you used to do in the old places. People really care about what they think that you're going to be able to do for them. So please orient around that, and that might require a little bit of language updates. As you're talking to people, this is also really important. There might be things you can do for them. So you might be in this, uncertain place and you're looking to kind of solve that problem for yourself. They may be looking to meet people too. And even if that person can't help you today, if you actually ask the question of them, what's going on for you? In what ways could I help? Who are you looking to meet? If you're able to, through your networking, connect them with others, it keeps you on their radar, and they're more likely to remember you as soon as they do hear of an opportunity that could be really well aligned, or they might listen a little bit more carefully about, or seek out, or have conversations with their own network about things that could be useful to you. So think about that. And the last thing I'd like to say just about your networks, we tend to look for things in the places we've always looked and for the things that we've always looked for. When I got this job at SOM, I wasn't actually looking for a job at all. It came to me from someone in my network who understood the value that I could bring to an organization and who had experienced me from a coaching standpoint and understands the level at which I've worked in the past. And when she heard about the opportunity, texted me and said, I found the perfect job for you. Again, I wasn't even looking. So if your network, if you've been really clear about what you'd love to do today or in the future, those people can bring those things to you. So spend time being curious, both for yourself and about other challenges, because you may be able to share your own unique, helpful perspective to them in ways that lead them to new ideas and increases the likelihood that they'll be able to bring great opportunities to you as well. So we're getting closer to the end of my formal remarks and into the space where we'll ask some questions and hopefully have a dialogue here that way, at least through the Q&A. I do want to remind you that, again, on the SOM alumni portal, there are resources, career resources. And I say some resources because there's many resources there. And there's many more resources then that are just there. So the recent CDO webinars that I mentioned that are listed here are not the ones that I referred to earlier. Those are on the SOM YouTube channel. And you might also find links to certain of those webinars as well on things like the SOM alumni webpage, the official alumni webpage. And if you have questions about how to connect there, again, you can find those links on the webinar. You can find those links on the SOM portal. You can also find those links in the monthly alumni newsletter that comes out. I hope you're reading those communications that our alumni relations team spends a lot of time putting together. So lots of resources for you to peek at, and I'm hoping that you're getting a sense that searching today isn't radically different than searching at other times. We want to be really aware of what's happening in the world in terms of economic needs and potential constraints. But it really is always about understanding what is your offer, what is your unique selling proposition, and sharing it with the world in a way that is resonant, that they are excited to hear from you, and you're tailoring the language to those types of opportunities that you want to draw in, and being open to connecting with things that may even be a little bit different than what you expected they could look like. I want to also point out, because we are dealing with a pandemic and people might look at this and say, well, it really is different. It really is challenging. Again, recognize that you're anxious and you're in the limbic system, and I want to honor that. And I did this quick search yesterday. There's 5 billion articles out there in less than a second on how to search for a job during the coronavirus pandemic. So while I could share with you a lot more resources, they would be general resources. And I want to encourage you to think about what it is you're really looking for, and dive into and do research on those industries and think about what's happening with those companies. And even in terms of your research, check out their COVID-19 webpage. All companies right now have that. and you can do some reconnaissance in terms of how are they dealing with their customers, how are they dealing with their plants and physical spaces, how are they dealing with their employees. And when you reach out to somebody that you might have worked with 10 years ago who's in that company now that you have some interest in, you can check in to figure out, are they really the employer that I want? How are you being treated? How do you feel about this right now? And again, reaching back out to those folks will position you really well as soon as they do open back up for hiring, to be at the front of the line. One other thing I want to speak to you about in terms of kind of what's happening in a lot of companies, there are some that are going, kind of full bore in recruiting processes today. There are others that are in a space of saying, you know what, there's a hiring freeze. And I want to appreciate that hiring freeze, because that means that the company is stepping back and saying, the world has just changed and we want to take care of our current responsibilities and our current people. And we want to make sure that we don't overextend in those ways. And they're figuring out, kind of where they want to land on the other side. They're getting ready for or working through this correction, recession going to correction, going to, again, expansion, so that they're well positioned for that. Conversations are still happening. Informational interviews are still happening. Even formal interviews in some cases are still happening. And you'll get right up to that point where you're ready to kind of get or receive an offer. And now we're going to hit pause and we have to wait. So again, waiting is simply a function of, we can't really control that piece. We can control our response to that. So I want you to think about your resilience. And instead of being anxious, well, I haven't heard from them. I talked to somebody recently and they said, I had an interview and I now haven't heard from that person, in a week. And they said they were going to get back to me, but I haven't heard from them. And it took me a couple minutes to get them to realize that you're talking to somebody who's responsible for, or in a role, in a financial role, that would be responsible for a monthly close. And this last month in a financial planning and analysis, and this last week or this last time frame would have been the time of close. And when they realized that, oh, this isn't about me, this is about what that person's going through. And we talked for a few minutes about what might be different for them in this past financial close versus other months. Seasonality is off. Things are different. There's a lot more questions maybe from senior management and figuring out what needs to happen next. So sometimes it's not about you, and really taking the moment to really dive in and understand what's happening in that company right now. And if I were there, what would I be doing and thinking about, and doing that research so that when you do get on the phone with the person, you're having a really thoughtful conversation that's meeting them where they are, because they are dealing with all of these things too, while they are working at home, not from home, working at home with their families during the global pandemic. And I don't want to minimize the fact that this is hard, whether you're on your own by yourself or whether you are fortunate to be sheltering in place with other people. I know I talked to my 13-year-old son last night, and he's like, Mom, I love you, and I wouldn't want to be any place other than here. But he's not left my house in 2 months. So it's hard for everyone. So recognizing, and again, going back into that place of checking in is helpful. Kayla, if you want to run the last poll now, I'm ready. I see a couple of Q&A that have popped in. I'm hoping that there's some more that might pop in, but I'm just curious, are you more likely to set aside some focused time in the coming weeks, or hopefully even in the coming days, to reconsider and refine your career goals in light of the coronavirus and generally? Give you a couple of moments to both respond to the poll and then also to share some of your questions in the Q&A, and I'll dive in and get into those in just a moment or two. Results are still coming through. Glad to see that. I'm also glad to see the results. All right, I'll share this now. Most of you are more likely now to take a few minutes or to take, hopefully not more than a few minutes, to take some focused time to really think about what you want to do for yourself and how you want to position yourself So I'm really glad that you found this useful from that perspective. And again, I am here to support you and to help you if you want to have a more personalized coaching conversation. Again, you make coaching appointments through the SOM portal, the alumni portal, and I'm sorry, I didn't share the results, but there it is for you guys to see. I want you to go to the SOM portal and you go to the career page and you scroll down and you'll see a section to click on that talks about how to connect with a coach. And I am the career coach for working professionals at SOM. So I work with all of our alumni, and I also am fortunate to work with our MBA for executive students as well. There is no charge for coaching. This is something that SOM does because throughout your career, we care about what you're going to do, and we're committed to educating leaders for business and society and career development. It evolves, and this is something that we can do for you. And we're also really, really grateful. And I just want to say this, thank you for those of you that are in positions to offer or connect us with opportunities for our current students, for internships, and for employment opportunities, virtual or otherwise. So let's dive into your questions. I'm going to peek here and see what we've got. Alrighty. So again, the recording after the session will be both shared with you by an email, and also it will be posted on the SOM YouTube page. And you might also see links for this in different places as well around the SOM website. So there's a lot of really remarkable content on there. There's a lot of great webinars recently and articles done by our faculty considering kind of what's happening in the world right now. So I hope you'll take some time to dive in and peek at those types of things. I'm just peeking at the questions right now. There's a question or a comment here. What you said about writing your story really resonates with me. I recently lost my post-MBA job in the travel sector, the industry I'm most passionate about. My previous industry, communications and crisis management, is booming. My question is how to write that story. That's a nice question. We're excited about travel work and previous interest in communication and crisis management. I'd look at maybe thinking about what are some intersections there. Specifically, travel is about experience, and so is communication and crisis management. So there might be some opportunities in terms of really thinking about what you learned in travel about experiences and about how different experiences prime people to grow in or move away from loyalty, and that could be something that could be really transferable to other organizations, particularly those that are focused right now in communications and crisis management. It's just an example, an idea. So what is it that I learned there, and how do I bring it over here? Something else about travel is, kind of really thinking about inventory management and availability and really thoughtful communication and marketing, getting people to opt in and say yes, because for every one of us on the call today, there would be a different ideal vacation or ideal trip. And really kind of thinking about that and taking the time to share your ability to discern what different organizations or individuals or groups of people might like is going to inform how they might like to be communicated to. So those are just a couple of kind of quick ideas without having a more detailed conversation about what you did where, about how I might start to think about making some connections to another field, another space. Another comment here, I think this period is perhaps to look at getting a job is, let's see. If we look at getting a job here in lieu of kind of starting a new business, the drive and the skills required entrepreneurially are exactly what you need to actually get a job. I think that's true as well. I mentioned, earlier, the person that was really wanting to focus on growth. Well, right now, growth is not what we would have defined growth as, 6 months ago. Growth is starting from where we are today and stepping forward. So the other thing I share with folks is when this had first started and people were really uncomfortable and uncertain, we often say, I'm absolutely excited to work in an ambiguous environment and dynamic environment. Now is the time to show people that. Now is the time to show people that you're really resourceful. Going back to my earlier comment about asking lots of questions, that's really important as well, because there's new questions today, clearly, than there were yesterday. And answering the right question, answering the old questions isn't going to, kind of move people forward in the world, in our job searches or companies. So it's really kind of being curious about where are the opportunities. And a suggestion that I've given to a number of people is when they're interested in different companies and roles, if you're not working and the person that you're trying to talk to is, they might not have the opportunity to read as much as you do. So if you're seeing a couple of articles or points of view or positions that you think are really unique or useful, different, really kind of bringing ideas together and sharing them in new ways, share them with people that you want to potentially work with in the future. Because if they acknowledge that, kind of that good idea came from you, and they're smarter when you're around than when you're not, they're more likely to do a little bit more on their side to try to bring you in faster or to keep you in the loop differently. How do we go about, here's another question, how do we go about researching and networking in industries that are viable post-COVID? I go back to one of the earlier suggestions and slides is starting to brainstorm. And I wouldn't just say what industry is viable. I would ask a bunch of questions off of that, or before you even get to the industries, what does a viable industry look like generally? What are the characteristics? What does sustainability mean? Not necessarily from the perspective of kind of green sustainability, but going concern. What would you look at normally, and then how is that influenced, and what might be impediments to viability? And we can kind of look at it from a bunch of different ways. And often in brainstorms like this, it's not going to be so clear cut that you brainstorm for 5 minutes and you have your list and off you go. It's robust, and you're going to, even if we're looking at an industry that may be more viable, it may be that certain companies are differently well prepared to move forward than others. I remember, again, many years ago in my career when I was still focused in the accounting and finance space, I worked for Pepsi. And what was really interesting about that, and again, just to take us back and to give you an idea about how long ago that was, it was kind of in the era of kind of the Cold War ending, and the walls coming down, and there being greater expansion into that part of the world by Western brands. And Pepsi was having a hard time against Coke in the former Soviet Union, in part because Pepsi was there first. Pepsi was there during communism, and their physical plant was old. So when Coke came in and it was new, that was seen as Western, where Pepsi wasn't. And there were some really interesting dynamics. So even though it's, for all intents and purposes, the same type of company, the same industry, soft drinks, it wasn't actually, the companies were not created equal in terms of how they took advantage of that different or that big change or shift in that part of the world. So it's not just the company or the industry that you want to think about, it's the companies. And I'd really dig into what are the qualities, and ask questions about those as you're having informational conversations with people. Just because you think it's that way, what do you want to ask that they're going to be able to show you that that's true? I talk about this all the time from our perspective when we're in interviews and such. You don't want to tell people that you're an accomplished professional that's comfortable in, kind of these ambiguous environments, and you're great with raising, growing teams. You want to show them by some of your stories and examples. So if you think about the viability of companies or industries, and the ideas that you have about what might make a company or an industry viable, think about what would be the proof points, what would be observable. If you said, show me, what would people be able to see? Or what would you be able to see that would give you proof or comfort that that's true? So hopefully that's helpful in terms of the research question. And again, I can give you lots more questions. This is something that people often say after a coaching conversation with me. They leave with more questions than they do with answers, but that's really what coaching is about. I'm here to help you think better about your situation. So hopefully that helps there. What resources or guidance do we have about maximizing LinkedIn, especially for, well, and I'll say anyone. This is something, a great resource. I'm so excited that somebody asked this question, and I'll tell you all about it. Please log into the career resources page on the SOM portal, and there is a fabulous course that will take you through. If you click on the link that's on the SOM portal, it will. It's about kind of finding the perfect job with LinkedIn is the title. The course is free with that link, so it's a $100 course. I took it a year ago, maybe a little bit more now. Every time I recommend it to people, they're like, wow, that's really kind of helped me. It'll help you to understand how LinkedIn works. It'll help you to understand the AI behind it. There's some functionality in there that you're not using, that you could be using around university tools, or understanding more about how recruiters are using keywords, or even just understanding how recruiters think about LinkedIn, or how you might, what you might need to do with your personal profile to get more clicks, if you will. And it's really not so much about the clicks, but having the right people find you. So please check out that course. And if you have any difficulty, I'll make sure that I share that course link in the notes when they go out, the slides later. But if you have any difficulties finding it, let me know, and I'll make sure I connect you with that. But it is right there for you right now if you want to go click on it on the SOM portal. Thoughts or questions about how to deal with compensation considering a career change? I'm going to try to answer this because I'm conscious of our time at a higher level right now. Sometimes we are seen as overqualified if we're trying to make a change. We really want to think about, this is kind of a two-part question. How do we overcome objections? So this is a piece where if you're looking to make a shift, you need to really help that person and have them believe that you're excited about that opportunity. And you want to think about what might be their objections. So if they're thinking you're overqualified, do they think that you're going to be bored? Do they think you're not going to get along with the team? What is it that you think, or that they would not like about your candidacy? And then you want to try to proactively overcome those objections. So that's one piece, and it takes some understanding about the role and the culture and the organization to understand. Sometimes you might just be a little bit too, how shall I say, intimidating to the person that you might be working for or reporting to because of your level. And you need to help to kind of create trust and rapport and a sense of safety for that person, where they're more excited to have you there than they feel threatened by you. Because remember what happens when we move into threat state. So what could be going on with them, and then how do we overcome proactively those objections? The other piece, though, is, what's your compensation? None of us are owed anything. So as we think about compensation, I want you to think about it relative to the value that you will bring to the organization that you're working in. And this is, again, why I spend a lot of time with people in unpacking the job descriptions and thinking about with whom will you be working, because we never work by ourselves. There's always some interdependency and relationships. And truly, how does your role create value in the future for this organization? That'll give you some flavor in terms of what they might be willing to pay you. The other piece of it is, if we are really thorough in our research and we look at other job descriptions, even that aren't relative to, or aren't kind of the ones that we're looking for, other departments, other jobs that might be on either side of us or above us or below us, it's going to give us some ideas about salary banding. So I do want you to go in kind of early on with some idea about what you think you'd be worth to and what you'd be paid in this company. And there's lots of other ways to, and more resources, again, on the SOM website on the careers page about how to do some salary research. So kind of, knowing what you're worth, again, I mentioned this earlier in the presentation today, really helps you to help other people to see that as well. And I'll take just a couple more questions, and then I'm going to have to close us down because, there's more to the day than just our webinar today. And I'm, again, thankful for the questions that you've brought, and hopefully I'll get to as many as I can. Moved from investment to corporate post-MBA. I've got years of corporate experience, and I'd like to move back. So what do I do if I actually made a move and then I want to go back? And how do I tell that story? How do you share that you actually still have connections to that earlier focus area, that earlier specialization? There, I'd show them, right? If you think about what are the most important things to that organization, to that market, it might be that you've taken a course recently, or it's just what are you sharing on LinkedIn in terms of articles or thought leadership about what's happening in that market? And then, what's your story about why you left that one to join another one? And what did you learn here that you couldn't have learned over there? So there's quite a bit of unpacking in terms of stories, and then creating relevance of that new experience that sets you up to kind of take a bigger role in your earlier focus area. Hopefully that's a quick answer to kind of repositioning there. Here's another question. What am I hearing about remote roles? This is my famous graduate school answer. It depends. Even my role at SOM, while I'm spending a lot of time on phone calls and video coaching with folks, my role is actually a physical role in that building that we're seeing virtually in my backdrop. We don't know when we're going back to campus. It depends. Hopefully it's soon, but we're not really sure. So there are a couple of companies I saw, and again, this is just research and it's really company dependent. I saw Nationwide has made an announcement, a very formal announcement, that certain numbers of their jobs will go to remote roles indefinitely. There's a lot going on, and this is, if this is something that you're curious about, there's plenty of research to do around, kind of the commercial real estate market. You look at that because that's a predictor to what's coming next. Some companies like Twitter and Facebook are talking about this. I look at this as a great opportunity where there will be, and I can't tell you exactly which companies are going to embrace it and which ones aren't. Some of them are going to be phenomenal opportunities where you might be able to, at your home in Iowa, to work for a company that is in San Francisco or something else like that. So there will be opportunities like that. There will also be challenges where if it is virtual, there are that many more candidates. So you're really going to have to think about how do you put yourself out there as one of the highest quality candidates. So again, this brings us kind of back to the very beginning. What do you want to be known for? In what ways are you going to bring your unique talents to the world? And how do we communicate that makes it easy for people to find you, and that makes it easy to kind of tell that story and connect where they're excited to learn more? And again, the bullet points that you share or the tidbits that you might share in a cocktail party, if we ever get to go to one of those again, virtual or in person, is something where the people are really leaning in and saying, tell me more. You're my people. I want to connect with you. There's more questions in the Q&A, and it's also the top of the hour, and I want to be conscious of our time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Please, if I didn't get to your question, or if you want to continue the conversation in a one-on-one way, reach out to me on CMS and make a coaching appointment. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully again very soon. And I wish you all well. That's the most important thing right now, is that you stay well and keep putting the very best version of yourself out there into the world. And in any way that I can help you to do that, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon.